Ask Reddit, what is the scariest encounter with another human you have ever experienced? My cousin who was like 14 was babysitting us, 9-year-old me, 4-year-old brother. Her dad called coming down from I wanna say crack, heroin, IDK something real bad. He called and screamed at her to tell him where her piggy bank was. She told him to frick off and hung up. He called back, she didn't pick up, and he left a voice message which played as he was leaving it saying basically he was gonna come down there and effing murder all of us with a knife. He was gonna come down there and effing kill us all. He was full of shit, but we were terrified. Can you imagine the pure fear a 9-year-old feels when a grown man who sounds crazy says he's going to murder her with a knife? So we prepared. We blocked out the windows, locked everything, put heavy furniture in front of the doors. My brother was asleep in his room. My cousin told me just leave him, but I couldn't stand the thought of him being alone in there, so I covert style belly crawled, heart beating out of my chest, across the kitchen, through the living room to his room, scooped him up, and brought him back to my mom's room, which we then barricaded ourselves into. I got no sleep that night and my mom and my aunt came back the next morning like what the F did you kids do? But I was honestly just happy to be alive and that my mom was home again. The worst part of the whole thing is, when she got home her dad had sold all of her belongings. I mean everything. Her bed, her dresser, TV, it was all gone. It was just an empty room. He's clean now, but I still hate his effing guts. F you Uncle Donald. When I was 15, I regularly was at home by myself, since both of my parents worked full time and my brother had moved away to college. Well, one day during the summer I was just relaxing at home, when all of a sudden someone knocks on the front door. I get up and check the peephole and see two guys just standing in the driveway just off the porch. One of them wearing a suit, the other wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, but facing away from the house, like he's playing lookout. I decide to ignore them, cause they'll go away, right? Wrong. They continue knocking, but getting progressively louder and more aggressive. Finally, I decide to call the sheriff's department and ask for an on-emergency check since they're trespassing. My dumbass decides to yell through the door that I had called, and before I can even realize how dumb it is, the guy starts kicking the front door. I freak the F out, run back toward the center of the house, and realize that there's a third guy trying to kick in the back door as well. At this point I call 911 and start screaming about these three guys trying to break into my house. Notoriously, it took the sheriff's deputies longer to get there than anyone would imagine, and they see the guys walking down the road later. Stop them to question, but no arrest. I was driving through a somewhat rough neighborhood at night, late after a movie, and while sitting at a light we saw this guy in a beat up car take a bump of cocaine next to us. We make eye contact. As the light turns green he merges behind us and then proceeds to follow us around flashing his lights and honking his horn for several blocks. We pull up to another red light, he pulls up next to us yelling at us to roll down the window. Turns out he just wanted to let us know we had a tail light out and then drove away. Once I'm sure I terrified this poor guy trying to let him know that his lights weren't on while he was driving 75 miles per hour on a major highway. If he had his parking lights on, they were super hard to see. I tried honking and flashing my lights, but I think he thought I was harassing him. Eventually I gave up. I hope he made it home safe. When I was 13, I just got dropped off from the school bus, so I had a bit of ways to walk home. As I get close to the corner of my street, some guy in a dark blue car rolls up and asked where I was headed. Told him I was going home. The guy excruciatingly slowed his car down to match my walk and asked if I wanted a ride home. I told him no thanks, I'm almost home. Then he continued to ask where I live and if I still wanted a ride home. Luckily I had a phone at this age and pulled out my Nokia phone. IDKY I remember this and pretend to call my mom. She wouldn't have picked up the phone and I was almost home. The guy saw what I was doing and sped off like crazy. From the age of 13, I started carrying pepper spray. I was about 14 over 15. School had just ended, so the bus home was packed with other school kids too. We were a couple stops away from where everyone got on when this guy with a huge jacket, hood up and mask on, We were in the middle of a heatwave so super odd, got on the bus, stormed upstairs past me and my friends, and threw down this huge bag he was carrying. He screamed this is a bomb, and ran off the bus. It took everyone a few seconds to process what just happened, but after those few seconds I experienced the most crazy panic I've ever seen. Everyone bolted downstairs and tried to get out, but the doors were closed. I remember this huge black dude just punched the glass out of the door like it was nothing, and people were just dragging themselves through it. When I got to the door I hit the emergency release to make it easier to jump off. Once we were out we sprinted at least 500 meters down the road and crouched for the explosion. Except there was no explosion. It was just a hoax. Turns out that the guy that did it was someone from my school that had previously been expelled. TL. Doctor, a kid threw a fake bomb on a bus and terrified everyone. Went down to the local creek with my friend. We were probably 10 or so. The local creepy teenager shows up, drunk out of his mind. I immediately knew this was bad. He mumbled something under his breath, and I looked at my friend with the "we need to get the F out of here" look. He stepped closer towards us and another guy, older and probably twice the size, ran up and grabbed him. He told us to go home and not come back. Later the creepy guy was involved in a robbery that turned into murder. And I still feel so thankful to the other guy who was there. The local creepy teenager, yes, no neighborhood would be complete without one. My first apartment was part of a complex that was U-shaped with a large grassy area in the middle. The neighborhood kids would run around and play in the grass a lot. One day I was sitting on my stoop talking on the phone when one of the kids fell over, grabbed his foot and started crying. He was maybe 5 or 6. He had stepped on a bottle cap and sliced open his foot. I took him inside, had him sit on the edge of the tub, washed his cut, and put some Neosporin on it, and a band-aid, and sent him on his way. A few hours later there is a knock on my door. When I answered, a massive skinhead with a tattoo of a pentagram on his neck was standing there with his chest out. The boy was peeking around one of his giant thighs pointing at me. He stuck his finger in my chest and yelled, "Did you take my boy in your effing house? That's my son. Did you give him a effing bath? Look at his foot." I shrieked. He cut his foot. I washed the cut. He inspected the kid's foot, then asked me point what exactly happened. I stumbled through the story. Then he just said, "Alright then." He shook my hand with a vice grip and I never saw him or his son again. Last year I moved from a dense urban area to a really pretty underpopulated rural one. I got super into trail running. There's a big circular route that I like a lot in the local nature preserve, and over the summer I was on an early morning run there when I passed a dude sitting on a rock slightly off the trail. He looked exceedingly normal, street clothes, hat, boots etc, and I figured him for a hiker. All good. So I make my way down the path, around, uphill into this nice overlook, where I usually stop to drink from the fountain. It's when I'm bent over at the fountain that I hear a twig snap, and I straighten up to see that guy, crouched over and stepping through the woods off the clearing, like he's trying to creep up on me. I bolted. The sprint back was the most terrifying experience of my life, obviously. I don't know if I lost him, or if he gave chase at all. The police never found anyone matching his description, and I don't run anywhere near there anymore. Edit. If you'd like to be creeped out further, the police said he had most likely seen me before and been stalking me for an indeterminate period, that is he was camped out front to see whether I'd show, then cut across to the spot where he knew I always stopped. I'd probably seen him before without realizing it. He might know where I live. I spent a few months when I was 16 hanging out with some organized crime guys in my hometown. Dudes had users in their trunks, and people didn't F with them. One night I went with a younger one, mid-20s, on an errand. I wasn't told what for, but he started driving to a bad part of town and told me I was going to help him take care of something. I got out at a stoplight and started walking. Something wasn't right. I never spoke to those dudes again. I was pretty sure at the time I was going to get killed or help kill someone. In retrospect, I was probably just on a beer run, or maybe sent to go pick up some money from a gambler or something. But at the time, I was convinced I was going to be a part of, or a victim to a major crime.
Bye.